Welcome to Tableau Advanced Training. My name is Stacey, and I'm going to be giving you some tips and tricks about getting the most from Tableau reports. This is a follow-up training to the Tableau beginner training. If you haven't taken that, there's an additional recording of that training available on Digital U and other places. So if you're looking for basics, I would start there. So what are we going to cover today in advanced training? We're going to be talking about more about how data gets into the Tableau system, which can be helpful if you're pulling data from different sources to understand what you're likely to get in Tableau. We're going to specifically talk about Google Analytics and Tableau reports and what kind of data each one contains. We're going to walk through the reports that are available and go through some advanced interactions to help get the most from reports. And then through this whole thing, I'll be sharing some tips and tricks as well, to get the most from Tableau. So let's just jump right in. So let's talk about how data is delivered into Tableau. So Tableau is actually just the tool that we use to display the data and to make it interactive and easy to use. There's a whole separate set of processes underneath that needs to bring the data into Tableau. So what this diagram shows is, so we actually have a lot of sources: Google Analytics 360, App Figures, which tracks the app downloads, Facebook, News Cycle, which is our subscriber billing system and subscriber data management system, as well as the email system. There's many others as well, where the actual transactions happen. And so what we do is each night, usually we feed the data into our analytics databases. So that way we can pull it all together in one individual place. Most of these systems have websites, such as the Google Analytics 360 website and Data Studio website, where you can pull data directly. And we take a copy of that and put that in the database. Now, why do we do that? There's a range of reasons. One of which it allows us to look across multiple data sources. So, for example, if you wanted to look at App Figures and know your app downloads or Facebook publishing data, instead of having 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different logins and having to log in over and over again, it allows you to look at things across the entire enterprise. Often the sources, you might have to log into different accounts for different properties. This also alleviates that, as well as enabling us to do more advanced long-term views of data. There's also this advantage as well. See these green circles on the left-hand side. In addition to the data that we have in these transaction systems, we can add goals, market information, other things to give context to the data and make it easier to use. Currently, you can't load your annual budget goals, for example, into any of the systems on the top to actually see where you're at. And this is where the analytics system can really be helpful. Once we have this all compiled, that's when it's available to Tableau. And while there's some real pros to having all of this data pulled together and nice and tidy, it does mean that the data is always a day behind. And so you can see yesterday's performance, but you can't see anything that's happening today. And that's an important thing to know. So most people still maintain some kind of login to the systems that they use regularly, and that's what they're going to use for either very detailed or specific requests or for looking at things same day. So specifically with Google Analytics 360, we wanted to talk a little bit about what's the difference between logging into analytics.google.com versus going to Tableau. So first, one of the advantages of Tableau is that we do a lot of the work knowing how to correctly pull data, and so you don't necessarily need to have a lot of training to use it. It's really more about some tips about getting the most from the reports, but you can't break Tableau and you can't necessarily make the data inaccurate. You do need to have a network ID, and this is key to the primary network ID that you use to log into other sorts of systems, but you don't need a special login. We've talked before about the timeliness of the data. Again, it's always the next day. For Google Analytics, there's about a 90-minute delay. And other sources such as News Cycles and App Figures, it kind of varies. Some of them are more current than others. I want to talk a little bit as well about sampling. Google Analytics is the only data source that I'm aware of that uses sampling as a way of pulling data. And what I mean by this is if you log into analytics.google.com and you request yesterday's page user visits, it doesn't pull every record that's in the database. What it'll do is it'll pull a sample of some percentage of all the records that are there. And it varies actually what that percentage is based on how much data you're pulling. Above a certain volume, it always samples to one degree or another, and it doesn't really say what it's doing. Where this comes into play is in Tableau, we actually do pull every record that's available in Google Analytics, and we use that to calculate the results. And the advantage of that is that you always get the same answer, no matter how many different times you pull a report in Tableau. Google Analytics will give you slightly different answers, even if you pull the same request within a few minutes, and that's related to that sampling. I think their perspective, and it's totally well-founded, is that foundationally you're going to get a good answer. It just may be, a little bit up or down. I think it's usually within a couple percentage points. I don't think we see plus or minus 3 percentage points of what you would normally get. Then lastly, the question is whether you need to be on the CMG network. Tableau is inside the Cox Enterprises security firewall. So if you're on a CMG or CEI Secure, if you're using a VPN, if you're on your desktop, you're going to be able to see Tableau just fine. That doesn't have to be true for Google Analytics or Data Studio. There you can just use a basic web URL, and that'll take you right to it. So now that we kind of have talked about what the pros and cons are of pulling things from Tableau versus directly, let's talk a little bit about what you can actually get in Tableau. So the analytics groups have developed a pretty comprehensive set of reports on a range of areas, and I'm just going to kind of hit the highlights of the different report suites. The way we organize them is if you actually log into Tableau, and we'll do that in a minute, you'll see that there's different folders, different projects, and this is how we control permissions. So everyone will have access to CMG Global, and I'll talk in a minute about what all is there. For radio analytics, the radio employees can see those, and you can see streaming dashboards for audio streaming, as well as monthly scorecards that track against goals. The newspaper analytics portfolio is very extensive. It includes a wide range of reports on subscribers and audiences and subscription revenue, and I'm not going to go into it and do it justice today, but there's an extensive suite available there. TV analytics at this time primarily is used for ad hoc reports related to TV. Most of the major TV reports actually appear in the CMG Global folder. You may not see all of these folders. We generally give permission based on the division that you're in to automatically see those reports. If you feel like there's reports that you'd like to see but you can't, just send an email to CMG Audience Analytics at coxinc.com, and we will adjust your permissions accordingly. Our goal here is certainly not to keep people from seeing reports that they need to see. It's really just about making sure that you don't see a lot of things that are relevant to you and have a harder time finding the reports that you need. Let's go a little bit deeper into CMG Global. The CMG Global report suite includes things that fall into basically 4 major categories. We have digital daily traffic reports, and this includes a daily overview, a digital year-over-year in comparison to goal, which is kind of against budget, basically, and then a report that goes into the devices that people are using to see our digital content, as well as where they came from, like search or social or email, that kind of thing. And then lastly, we've got the OTT dashboard, which is specific to OTT products, such as Roku or Apple TV, where we can live stream our content. In addition to kind of the daily reports that let us know where our traffic is, we also have some historic traffic trend reports. Both of these reports actually go back to January 1, 2014. So you can see a pretty extensive history and how trends have changed over time. The historic digital traffic trends is sourced in the numbers that are in the Hyperion system, which are kind of like what our budgeted numbers and what our actual numbers have been since January 2014. And then the Adobe Historic Data Mart was was created when we rolled off of the Adobe Analytics report suite at the end of 2017. And you can see there in more detail long-term trends with devices, with categories of content, content types, and traffic for all of the properties over that time period. We also have a growing area of in-depth content analysis. These are currently either new or just being launched. The Enterprise Video Dashboard looks at video content viewership and production across all CMG properties, including breakouts between live and video on demand content. And then the content detail will be launching in the late August or early September, and that offers detailed traffic results for every article and piece of content that's been published on any type of Cox Media Group site. So that really gets into really nitty-gritty detail about what content we're driving traffic. Last is is what we're calling, for lack of a better term, some of the growth drivers. These are different avenues for building traffic. The first one is app figures, which looks at our app downloads. The second one is Facebook posting patterns, as well as the content that they drove. The next one is push notification detail, which is fueled by the Urban Airship application, which produces and distributes push notifications in our apps. And then last but not least is email performance, which looks at all of the emails sent and what the open and clicks were from those. And these are kind of grouped together because if you're going to kind of drive traffic to your websites or your apps, these are the levers that you have available to you, and these can be helpful to understand the general direction. So this is what's in CMG Global. Let's actually take a look at Tableau in action. So this is the website that we're going to go to. So here we go to coxdata.coxthings.com. Many of you may be receiving emails, and you can also click on those, and we go into that in more detail in the beginner training. So I'm going to go ahead and log in here. As we remember from our beginner training, you always type in CMG / in front of your normal user ID and password, because we are using a shared asset with CEI, so that's an extra step. So what you can see here is, I'm an administrator, so I have access to a whole range of different reports that you may or may not see. I'm going to go into the CMG Global screen, which is the main project we spent the most time looking at. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open up my first report. I'm going to look at the app figures report. All right. So app figures is, again, it looks at every app download we've had. So the first thing I always do when I log in is, if you see in the upper right-hand corner, this may appear on the bottom actually if you click in the email, but it's usually up here at the top. I click on this full screen. So what that does is it makes sure that I'm using all of the space on my screen to display, and can make sure nothing's being cut off. One of the things, so this is a dashboard that's got data from all sorts of, every business in CMG, as well as every app. And this is a good example of one of the really nice things about Tableau, is it's really about interacting and being able to drill down to see the numbers that you want to see. So I'm just going to kind of jump in here and say, well, let's say that I work in Charlotte, for example. I can filter down just to the Charlotte traffic by clicking on this box right here, and everything else now is recalculated based on that selection. And we like to use these spatial graphs because it allows you to do that. If I want to undo, and as I say, I want to get rid of the Charlotte one, I can click again, and it's like a two-way toggle, and it will recalculate. So now I'm in Charlotte, and what I can see here is I've got two properties in Charlotte. I've got WSOC TV, and I've got Go Carolinas. And then within that, these are all the apps. There's 5 apps that comprise this traffic. And I can keep drilling down here, and now I can just see what the weather app looks like. and I can see what the stores are, and I can see how it all comes together. If you've been filtering for a while, and you realize, oh, I want to start over again, one of the tips that I find most helpful is if you go to the upper left-hand corner, you'll see there's this little button. It's like an arrow drawing to the left. That's the revert button. If you click that, it'll clear all the filters and take you back to where you started when you looked at it first on the Tableau server. And so if you're ever kind of not sure what you're looking at, that's a good way of doing it. In some views, these ones with these spatial graphs, it's less of a problem, but you can actually you can select two filters that are incompatible with each other and get down so that the screen becomes blank and there's no data displayed. It can happen pretty easily. So what I do is, if I get into that situation, again, revert and kind of start over, and if there's any little filter that you forgot that you selected, it'll clear it out and you can have a clean start. Okay, so we've talked about kind of using these as an interactive way. One of the things also, most line graphs like this are also interactive. So let's say I'm back at Charlotte again. But let's say that I'd like to just understand what I've done in 2018, because this goes all the way back to 2016. And it's telling me I've had 237,000 downloads for WSOC TV, but I just want to see what I had in 2018. There's another little thing up here you may or may not see. This is actually an average line, this little line here, and it'll tell you that you've had an average of 7,700. But what is that for 2018? So the way you can do that is you can do one of two things. You can either select this bar, and if you hold down the control key, you can select multiple bars. But one other thing that you can do is you can actually drag a box here, and you can select everything for 2018. You can select a whole range in one go. And then if you made a mistake, like, oops, I accidentally got a December of 2017, you can use the control key to kind of take that out. And maybe I don't want to have August right now. We're just partway through the month. So I'm going to take that out too, so I can just look at completed months. And then what I'll see here is that in 2018, I've got 40,000 downloads, and then I can see that my monthly average for 2018 is 5750. And then if I decide, oh, I want to see what 2017 looked like, I do the exact same thing. And I go back in around like this, and I can check to see using the hover, that's December, that's January, I didn't get any extra months, and then I can see what my 2017 averages are, and this will recalculate these as well. So if you're trying to pull numbers to kind of get a December, for certain dates, or a yearly average, this is a very helpful way of doing it. So, and again, just if I want to start over again, I can hit that revert button. So let's keep going. That was the app figures, and that's a good example of how you can use graphs to interact and to do as actual filters. And if you're not sure if something's a filter, just click on it. That's the beauty of Tableau, is that you can't break anything. If you do something, it's not going to mess up somebody else's report. Just kind of interact. So here I've got the MBO report, which gives us budget value. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and select that full screen again, just to make sure that I've got it all the way on the screen. One other tip here for resizing is, because this is in a browser, it can also, the control plus and control minus, things that are just part of your browser's control, can also apply here. So if something is looking really small, you can get, you can zoom right in here or zoom right out by using your general browser controls. All right, so the MBO report's a really powerful report. It can be, I think some people find it a little bit intimidating because it gives you a lot of different data to interact with, but it's very helpful. What you see here is, so this is the goals and how, and what we reached. Right up here, I've got, let's go ahead and select everybody in this in the market. And I want to talk a little bit first about, I want to talk a little bit about how to interact and save views of the reports that you like and that you find the most helpful. Let's say that you come in a report and you are always looking at the same markets because you really want to focus in on your group. What you can do is, if you want to filter, and let's say that I think I actually have this set to look at let's look at Dayton Radio, for example. And I would come in here and I do these filters, and I hit the apply button. And so now I've got it all here. And with Tableau, it'll tell you here, usually it'll say what filters you've got selected, and if they're all there. So you got that. Now I have it exactly the way I like it, and this is the way I look at it over and over again. If you hit the escape button so you can see this menu up here, what you can do is you can create your own custom view. And this one I actually have already labeled monthly file numbers, but you just type it in here and you hit the save button, and it creates a kind of a permanent record of the things that you like. And so you can actually make it your default and make it public. So this is the one that you'll see automatically, so you don't have to keep filtering it over and over again. You can also subscribe to it. So let's say that that you really like this view and you want to have it sent to you automatically. What you can do is you can just select the schedule on which you'd like to have it sent to you. You have this view. If you want to add other people, you can. And then you just you subscribe yourself and off you go. You hit subscribe. And this is exactly what will come into your email box. This is a really powerful tool. It's a tool that I think more people should take advantage of, because especially if you're looking at reports regularly, this will really help you just find the information you want really easily. So we're talking about subscribing there. I'm going to go back in here and I want to zero in on this particular report. There's some new data that we just added to the reports that I think will be really helpful here. I'm going to go ahead and revert now back to the rest of the market, although I've got this saved view that I've used before, so I need to make a little adjustment here. Okay. So we've just been adding some new fields that help you drill into data. It's really it's helpful. So in the beginner training, we talked about how to use the date filter, how to use this toggle to get the metric that you want to see. We also talked about the division and the markets and how to see those, just the data that you're looking for, and as well as the property that you're looking for. We've just added these new product dimensions. Where this can be really helpful is when we talk about products, we've kind of put them together in some hierarchies that make sense. So we've got apps, the OTT products, which are again kind of Apple TV, Roku, the television streaming products, and sites. And if you're looking at, say, you're looking at this daily sessions trend, and you're trying to understand where's the performance and how are our apps performing, or how are apps at other properties performing, this can be a very helpful way of looking at it, because you can just do a quick filter there. And what you can see is, that apps were performing better at the beginning of the year, but have since had some softness in them. While if I go through sites, I can kind of take a look at that and see that those are performing more steadily. And we are trying to troubleshoot, kind of why you're up or down. That can be very helpful. You can go deeper though, so that's at the very high level, those classes of product. Once you select those, we actually list every product that's here. So if you really want to focus in on music apps, weather apps, sites, Roku TV, you can find yours very easily, and you can find others that are like it. And you can keep going deeper. With site version, now this is a field that I think if you use Google Analytics regularly, this will be familiar to you, but if not, I want to bring it to your attention because it can be very helpful. Site version allows you to kind of look even more in a more detailed way at both websites and apps, as well as OTT. And let's look at how this works. As with most Tableau, if you select kind of this parent category, it'll automatically only show you the things that are still relevant. If you're looking at apps, these are the site versions that are available. This is how you can tell the difference between your Android apps, iPad apps, iPhone apps, and responsive apps. So in some cases, for one product, there'll be multiple versions of that one product that are built in different platforms, and this allows you to go to that level of detail. For the OTT apps, the site versions, again, will tell you about whether is it Amazon Fire, Apple, Roku, what platform is that particular OTT app. And you can kind of see here, for example, this is a good example. So here we see OTT going up if we wanted to go in and say, I wonder which of the OTT app platforms is happening when. You can see exactly, oh, here's where Roku came in, and here's where Apple TV, and you can kind of get into that level of detail. And then last, but not least, in your websites, there are several values here. Again, there's instant, which is important. Instant is a newer category that we just added, and that includes Facebook Instant articles and Google AMP traffic. We actually get a fair number of requests from the advertising group to set that into its own category because the ad availability is different. So there's mobile sites, non-mobile sites, and responsive sites. When you go further into it, we do track the app vendor. So, for example, if you've transitioned from one development to another, you might see CMG to, these are some of the third-party vendors we use to make apps. And then last, there's also classifications for the kind of content. So if you just want to look at traffic products or weather products or sports products, you can use this very quickly to identify those. So these are some new product features. They're not available on every report we do. Some reports are, it's not a field that's relevant. For example, in Facebook, we don't necessarily track site versions for Facebook because it's not our own product in that way. And for some historic data, it's not available. So just kind of keep your eyes open for that. It can be very helpful. So one of the use cases that comes up a lot is downloading data. Tableau is great for visualizing data, but sometimes you really need to produce an Excel report or just write down what numbers were. In almost all of the reports, we've created some what they're called custom date selections. This is kind of getting cut off a little bit, but they're custom date selection tabs, and I'm going to click on one here so you can see what it looks like. These are set up specifically with the idea of allowing you to both pick the dates that you want, so it's not going to necessarily show you just yesterday, as well as being set up to make it easy to download a clean version. So I'm going to jump right in here and look. So they usually have all the data for all the sites for all days available. So let's say that right now it's the middle of August. Let's say that I wanted to pull a report just for June, and I wanted to know what my June dates were, or even a few days within June. This date selection here is a free-form date. So what I can do is I can click on the first one and select June 1, and then I can click on the second one, and I can just kind of move around here until I say, okay, those are the dates that I'd like to pick. I actually prefer clicking into these date fields rather than using these sliders because they're just a little tricky to get a hold of and to get adjusted the way you want them to. So once you have this, and let's say that I'm only interested in Miami. So I select that and apply. As you can see here, it's filtered down. I can keep filtering down to the traffic that I want. But once I have it the way that I want it, the way that you can download is what you're actually going to want to do is you need to have this bar again visible. I click into what I want to download, and then I click the download button. Now, my first instinct is to download data, and I just want to show you what Tableau thinks data is. So first, it's going to give you this full data here, which is every row that it's calculating against. This is just too much. So what you really want to pick is download crosstab. I wish they would name it something different, but that's the way it is. So you download a crosstab, and this is what it gives you. It gives you an Excel-based thing that's exactly what you have on screen, and the numbers are all nice and tidy, and you have what you need here. So this can save a lot of time and a lot of typing and keying. But basically this is exactly what you had right on the screen. One of the tricky things is if you get it filtered and you go up to the download button, if the crosstab is not is not displayed as an active option, just click in to the table you want. If there's multiple tables on the screen, sometimes Tableau doesn't know which one you really want to download. So if you just click into it, then this button will become active again. Okay. So that's how you download. You can also, there's other download options available. You can download it as a PDF. You can download it as an image, which can be really fast if you're producing a PowerPoint or another report. Some of you may not see the Tableau workbook available to you because of the level of permissions that you have. So for the MBO report in particular, so we've showed this in this custom date selection how it works overall. The MBO report has two different views. One is a custom date selection for the actual versus goal values or your budget values. It does, and it'll tell you what you did, how it's pacing against goals. There's a second tab that allows you to do year over year, and I get a lot of requests for these reports, and so just know that this is available. So here I've selected June, and let's say that I just want to, I'm just going to pick Dayton here, and what it'll show you is the difference to prior year. You can see the whole difference to prior year and kind of look at those pieces. So just be aware that's available. I want to share a couple of other tips and tricks here. So you can create favorites of reports that you really like, and that's just by clicking up here on this little star. When you click something on the star, it goes into this kind of quick menu, and you can see here where I've created this list of all the different reports. If you're in an individual report, it'll tell you this view that you were on. You can also just do it with the whole report here. Like I've set the app figures is one of my favorite reports, and I've got that. And you can search those. You can also do, once you've made these custom views, you can search those too. I think you can make those your favorites. So that's a very handy tip. And I'm going back to the major workbooks. Again, this will keep track of all your different workbooks and the views that you have access to. So I think, so we've covered a lot of the main tips and the main interactions that I wanted to highlight. Let's go back here and let's talk a little bit about how you can tell if a report is refreshed. So when you're in Tableau, when you log in, sometimes you'll be wondering, especially like if you log in the early morning hours, sometimes you'll go to a report and you'll look at the view and it looks like it's blank. And that's usually because it's waiting for yesterday's data to arrive. This is how you can tell. It says right here, extract, and this was extracted on August 3rd, 2018 at 9:36. And that can be a quick way of checking. If you're in Tableau, again, you kind of go back to that main view and you'll see who the owner is, how many views it has, and what the extract time was. You can actually also sometimes see what the refresh schedule is. You can see, oh, this one's usually between 9 and 9:30, and that's helpful information. So you know if you subscribe yourself at 7 o'clock, you're going to be getting a lot of blank reports, and we actually will fix that for you sometimes. Okay, quick tips. This is again from the some of the highlights from the beginner training. You have to be on the CMG network, and when you're logging in, you've got to type in the CMG /. If you've got a daily email, click on the report image. When you're actually subscribing to a report, and I want to show this real quick. The way you subscribe to a report is if you're in a report, you have to go all the way in to the view that you want to see, and you click on the subscribe button up here. It'll ask you, do you want this view or the entire workbook? So I would recommend using only this view because otherwise it's going to give you an image of every tab in the workbook, and it becomes this very long email. It takes up a lot of space in your inbox. And usually if you have this first initial image or the one that you're most interested in, then you can continue, you can click on it and navigate to the things that you'd like to see. Don't forget about being on a VPN. If it's just fine not finding the URL or it's not connecting you, it's likely that you're not in a network. If you ever wonder, especially if there's a report that you're just not aware of, we try to keep our reports as easy to find. But sometimes, especially like if you don't have a radio access, you might be looking for an audio streaming report and you wonder, does it exist? Well, if you go to the Audience Shared Analytics portal, it's designed to be kind of a central place, so no matter where a report is, you can know if it's here and hopefully download a copy if it's not interactive. You go to asap.cmg.imt and you'll see there's no passwords, there's no login required, and it'll show you can just do a search on reports and you'll say if you want audio streaming, and it'll tell you what's available, and you can request access to it or be linked to it directly. This is the current schedule of reports. For those of you who are watching this training later, email cmgaudienceanalytics@coxing.com and we will send you the most current version of it. This is what we have now, and it tells you when reports are published and what reports are available, and includes the important tip of typing CMG / to make sure that you can get into the report. But again, if you'd like the most current version, go to that. So I thank you for your time. CMG Audience Analytics at coxing.com is the best place to send questions, and thank you so much for your time.